I buried my wife on a Friday afternoon while the rain turned the cemetery dirt into mud. And the next morning, my son looked me in the eye, took my car keys, and said, "Dad, your good life is over." But he did not know that the old man standing in front of him was not just a grieving widower hour. He was a man who had spent 30 years negotiating contracts in war zones. And he did not know that someone was secretly watching his every move. If you are watching this, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments if you have ever dealt with ungrateful family members, because what I am about to tell you might just save your future. My name is Harrison Apprentice. I am 70 years old, and for the last 4 decades, I let the world believe I was just a simple, retired logistics manager. I let my wife Catherine stand in the spotlight. I let her put her name on the deed to our house, on the titles of our cars, and on the joint checking account that we used for daily expenses. Catherine was the face of our family, the warmth that kept us together. And I was the silent partner, the one who stayed in the shadows. I did it to keep the peace because I knew our son Jason had a jealous streak a mile wide. I knew he resented me, but I never imagined that the moment the dirt settled on his mother's grave, he would turn into a predator. The funeral service had ended only 20 minutes prior. The few friends who had braved the weather were heading to their cars, their black umbrellas looking like crows taking flight. I stood by the grave feeling the water seep into my dress shoes, staring at the fresh mound of earth that covered the only person who truly knew me. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean of any emotion, except a dull, aching pain. All I wanted was to go home, sit in my armchair, and smell the lingering scent of Catherine's perfume on the throw pillows. I turned to walk toward my sedan, the vintage Lincoln Town car that I had kept in pristine condition for 15 years. I reached for the door handle, but a hand slammed against the glass, blocking me. It was Jason. At 40 years old, he still dressed like a man trying to convince everyone he was rich, wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that was too big for his wrist. His eyes were red, but not from crying. They were red from something else, something manic and hungry. "Give me the keys, Dad," Jason said. His voice was not soft. It was not the voice of a son comforting a grieving father. It was a command. I looked at him confused, thinking maybe he was worried about my ability to drive in the rain. "I am fine to drive, Jason," I said, my voice raspy from days of silence. "I just want to go home." "No, you are not fine," Jason snapped, snatching the keys from my loose grip. "You are old, you are emotional, and quite frankly, you are a liability. Get in the passenger seat. Monica will drive your car home. I am driving you." I looked over Jason's shoulder. Monica, my daughter-in-law, was standing by her SUV. She was checking her makeup in the side mirror, unbothered by the rain. She caught my eye and gave a tight little wave that did not reach her eyes. There was no warmth there, only calculation. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, the same warning sensation I used to get in the desert right before a convoy hit an ambush. But I was tired. My grief was a heavy blanket weighing me down, so I did not fight. I got into Jason's luxury sedan and clicked the seatbelt. I expected us to turn left toward the house, toward the wake, where relatives would be eating potato salad and whispering about how well Catherine looked in the casket. But Jason turned right toward the commercial district. "Where are we going?" I asked, watching the windshield wipers slash back and forth. "This is not the way home. We have to make a stop," Jason said, keeping his eyes on the road. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We need to go to the bank." "The bank?" I frowned. "Jason, today is your mother's funeral." "The bank can wait until Monday." "It cannot wait," Dad, Jason said. And for the first time he looked at me. His eyes were cold, dead things. "Mom left a mess, Dad. Unpaid medical bills, funeral costs, debts you do not even know about." I need to secure the joint account before the creditors freeze it. You need to sign the transfer authorization today. I sat back in the leather seat, my mind racing. Catherine was meticulous with bills. We had excellent insurance. I knew for a fact there were no unpaid medical bills because I had written the checks myself from my private funds, the ones Jason knew nothing about. He was lying. He was lying to me less than an hour after we put his mother in the ground. We pulled up to the bank. It was a Saturday, but Jason had clearly made an appointment because the branch manager, a nervous-looking man named Mr. Emar Henderson, was waiting for us at the glass doors. Jason gripped my elbow as we walked in, his fingers digging into my arm, as if he were guiding a prisoner, not his father. "Sit here," Jason ordered, pointing to a chair in Mr. Henderson's office. Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable, shifting papers on his desk. "Mr. Apprentice? I am so sorry for your loss." Mrs. Apprentice was a wonderful woman. "Thank you," I said quietly. Jason cut in sharply. "We are not here for condolences, Henderson. We are here for the transfer. My father needs to transfer the full balance of the joint savings and checking into my personal account for management purposes. He is not capable right now." I looked at my son. The mask had slipped completely. There was no grief on his face, only greed. "Jason, that account has $40,000 in it. That is money your mother and I saved for house repairs and emergencies. You cannot just take it." Jason laughed. It was a short bark of a laugh that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet bank. "Taking it? I am saving it, Dad. Mom is gone. You think you can manage a household budget? You spent 40 years tinkering in the garage while Mom paid the bills. You lived off her dad. You lived a good, easy life because she carried you." I felt a flash of heat in my chest. He thought I was a leech. He thought the comfortable life we lived, the vacations, the paid-off mortgage, the cars came from Catherine's salary as a school librarian. He had no idea about the contracts I fulfilled for the military. He had no idea about the millions sitting in offshore trusts. And Catherine, bless her soul, had kept that secret to her grave, just as I asked her to, so that Jason would not grow up entitled. It seemed the plan had backfired. He grew up entitled anyway, just without the money to back it up. "I am not signing anything," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Take me home, Jason." Jason leaned across the desk, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale cigarette smoke. "You are going to sign it, Dad, because if you don't, I will have you declared incompetent. I have already spoken to a doctor. Grief-induced dementia. It is very common. Do you want to spend your mourning period in a state facility, or do you want to go home?" I looked at Mr. Henderson, hoping for an ally. The banker looked down at his shoes, refusing to meet my gaze. Jason was a big client, or at least a loud one, and I was just an old man in a wet funeral suit. I was about to stand up. I was about to show Jason exactly how capable I was. I still had the strength to break a man's wrist if I had to. But then I looked out the glass wall of the office toward the lobby. Monica was there. She was standing near the teller line holding her phone up. The red recording light was blinking. She was live streaming, or at least recording a video. She had a look of exaggerated concern on her face, speaking softly into the microphone, probably narrating a story about her poor, confused father-in-law causing a scene at the bank. If I shouted, if I fought, if I stood up for myself, they would have the evidence they needed. They would show the judge a video of an angry, violent old man. They would lock me away, and then they would find the real money. They would find the trusts. I had to be smart. I had to be the strategist I was 30 years ago in the desert. I had to lose this battle to win the war. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hand tremble as I reached for the pen. I forced a look of defeat and confusion onto my face. "Okay, Jason," I whispered, making my voice crack. If you think it is best, Dad," Jason said, relaxing instantly. A triumphant smirk curled his lip. Trust me, your good life is over now that Mom is gone. You need someone to take control. I signed the papers. I watched Mr. Tung Henderson type into his computer, transferring $40,000, the last of my visible liquid cash, into Jason's control. I watched my son smile as the receipt printed. He took the paper, folded it, and put it in his pocket as if he had just won a lottery. Good boy, Dad, Jason said, patting my cheek with a condescending tap that made my skin crawl. Now let's get you home. You need a nap? He walked out of the office strutting. I followed him, moving slowly, dragging my feet, playing the part he wanted me to play. But as I walked past Monica, who lowered her phone with a satisfied smile, I made a silent vow. They thought they were taking control of a helpless old man. They thought they had stripped me of my resources, but they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had invited a wolf into their house, and they had no idea that the teeth were still sharp. As I stepped back out into the rain, I checked my watch. It was noon. By Monday morning, I would have my first counter move ready. Jason said my good life was over. He was right. The quiet, peaceful life was over. The war had just begun. The drive back from the bank was suffocating. Jason drummed his fingers on the steering wheel to the rhythm of some bass-heavy song while the rain finally tapered off, leaving the streets of our suburb glistening and gray. I stared out the window at the neighborhood where I had lived for 40 years. Every lawn, every mailbox, every tree held a memory of Catherine. We had planted the dogwood on the corner when Jason was 5. We had walked these sidewalks holding hands every evening until her knees got too bad. Now looking at it through the tinted glass of my son's luxury car, it all felt distant, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. When we pulled into the driveway, I expected to see the house quiet and dark, a place for mourning. Instead, there was a white panel van parked right on the grass, leaving deep tire tracks in the lawn. I had meticulously manicured for decades. The front door was wide open. Strangers, 2 burly men in coveralls, were walking out carrying my leather armchair, the one I sat in every night to read. What is going on? I asked, stepping out of the car. My legs felt heavy, not from age, but from the sheer weight of the day. That is my chair. Jason walked past me, checking his phone. We are doing some clearing out, Dad. Getting a head start. I hurried to the front door. Inside, it was chaos. The foyer, which Catherine always kept pristine with a vase of fresh lies on the entry table, was cluttered with boxes. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by the heavy boots of the movers. I heard a crash from the living room, and the sound of Monica's voice shrill and commanding. No, no, that goes in the trash pile. She was shouting, pointing at a stack of old vinyl records. Catherine's records. The ones we used to dance to in the kitchen. I moved toward her, my hands trembling with a rage I tried hard to suppress. Monica, those are not trash. Those belong to us? Monica turned around. She was holding a clipboard, ticking things off like a warehouse manager. Oh, Dad, you are back. Look, we are just decluttering. If we want to sell this place for top dollar, we need to stage it, modernize it. No offense, but this old stuff smells like, well, it smells like old people. Sell the house, I repeated. The word hung in the air. We haven't even read the will. You cannot just sell my house. Just sell. It is Mom's house, Jason corrected, walking in behind me. And since she didn't leave a specific will regarding the property, it goes into probate, but as her next of kin, we are the administrators. We are doing this for you, Dad. He put a hand on my shoulder, heavy and condescending. You cannot live here alone. It is too big, too many stairs. We are going to get you into Sunny Meadows. You know that 5-star facility across town, heated pool, gourmet meals? It is like a resort, but it costs money, Dad. We need to renovate the upstairs, sell the house, and use the equity to pay for your golden years. I looked from Jason to Monica. Their eyes were flat, shiny surfaces. They were lying. I knew Sunny Meadows, I knew the cost, because I'd looked into it for Catherine when she got sick. It cost $12,000 a month. With the mortgage paid off, this house might sell for $400,000. That would cover a few years, maybe. But then what? And why the rush? Why today? Where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, looking at the empty space where my furniture used to be. We set up a space for you, Monica said, gesturing toward the hallway. It is temporary, obviously, just until we finish the renovations upstairs. The dust and fumes would be bad for your lungs. She led me not to the guest room, not to the study, but to the door under the staircase. The basement door, I stared at the white painted wood. You want me to stay in the basement? It is fully finished, Jason said, nudging me forward. It is private quiet. You will have your own space to grieve. I opened the door and the smell hit me first. Damp earth, mildew, and the stale scent of things forgotten. I walked down the wooden steps, my hand gripping the railing that felt sticky with humidity. Jason flipped a switch, and a single naked bulb flickered to life, casting long, harsh shadows against the concrete block walls. It was not fully finished. It was a storage space. They had pushed the old holiday decorations and broken appliances to one side to clear a small square in the center. There, on the cold concrete floor, sat an old twin mattress. Not a bed frame, just a mattress. A pile of mismatched blankets was thrown on top. Next to it were 3 cardboard boxes with my name scrolled on them in marker. This is it, I asked, my voice echoing off the cold walls. This is where I sleep. It is cozy. Monica chirped from the top of the stairs, refusing to come down like a little apartment. And look, we brought your things down. I walked over to the boxes. One of them had tipped over, spilling its contents onto the gritty floor. My breath caught in my throat. It was my shadow box. The glass had cracked. Spilled out across the concrete were my medals. The Bronze Star, the combinations for logistics support during Desert Storm, the service ribbons. They lay there gathering dust next to a dead cockroach. I knelt down my knees, popping in the cold air. I reached out and picked up the Bronze Star. The metal was cold against my skin. 30 years ago, I was in a tent in the middle of a sandstorm coordinating supply lines for 3,000 troops, while mortars fell half a mile away. I slept on a cot that smelled of diesel and sweat. I ate MREs that tasted like chalk. I endured heat that could melt the rubber off your boots and cold that settled in your bones at night. I did it because I had a job to do. I did it because I was tough. I looked up at my son standing at the bottom of the stairs. He looked soft. His hands were manicured. His suit was unwrinkled. He had never known a day of true hardship in his life because I had shielded him from it. I had built a wall of money and comfort around him. And now he was using that comfort to bury me. He saw an old man kneeling on the floor, clutching a shiny piece of metal. He saw weakness. I stood up slowly, slipping the metal into my pocket. My back straightened just a fraction. My eyes cleared. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my gut, but around it, a cold, hard resolve was forming. Okay, Jason, I said, my voice flat. I understand. Good, Jason said, looking relieved that I wasn't fighting. He checked his watch. We are going to order pizza upstairs. I will bring you down a slice later. Get some rest, Dad. He turned and bounded up the stairs, his footsteps heavy and eager. I watched him go. I heard Monica say something to him at the top, and then the door closed. I stood in the silence of the basement listening, and then I heard it. The sound was unmistakable, the metallic slide of a deadbolt. They had locked the door. I walked over to the stairs and climbed them silently. I tried the knob. It turned, but the door wouldn't budge. Locked. From the outside. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't a father being cared for. I was an inmate. They had put me in a hole so they could strip the meat off the carcass of my life upstairs. They thought the basement would break me. They thought the cold and the damp would make me weak, make me pliable, make me die faster. I walked back down to the mattress and sat down. I looked around the dim room. I saw a vent near the ceiling. I saw the exposed pipes. I saw the structural beams of the house I had paid for. They didn't know who they had locked up. You don't lock a logistics contractor in a basement and expect him to wither away. You just gave him a base of operations. I pulled the burner phone the stranger had given me from my sock where I had hidden it. I checked the signal. 1 bar. Enough. I didn't call anyone yet. First, I had to secure my perimeter. I began to unpack the boxes, not to reminisce but to take inventory. I needed to know what resources I had. I needed to survive the night. And tomorrow, when they opened that door, they would not find a scared old man. They would find a soldier waiting for his moment to strike. Above me, I heard the muffled sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the hardwood floors. They were erasing Harrison Apprentice from the house. But down here in the dark, Harrison Apprentice was just waking up. 1 week. That is how long it takes to strip a man of his dignity, if you know exactly which buttons to press. For 7 days I lived in the concrete box beneath my own home. I learned the rhythm of the house above me by the creaking of the floorboards. I knew when Jason paced in the living room worrying about money. I knew when Monica was watching television in the master bedroom, my bedroom, because the bass from the surround sound system vibrated through the ceiling joists. On Tuesday morning, the door at the top of the stairs opened. It was the first time it had been unlocked since they shoved me down there. I blinked against the sudden intrusion of light, my eyes having adjusted to the perpetual gloom of the basement. Jason stood there silhouetted like a warden. "Come up," he said. "We need to talk about finances." I climbed the stairs, my knees stiff from the dampness. The kitchen looked different. They had replaced the warm oak table Catherine loved with something made of glass and cold steel. It looked like an operating table. On it lay my wallet, my checkbook, and my credit cards. Jason was holding a pair of scissors. "We have been reviewing the accounts, Dad." He said, his voice smooth and practiced. "It is worse than I thought. Your spending is out of control. The insurance premiums, the subscriptions, the maintenance costs on the car, it is bleeding the estate dry." He picked up my Platinum American Express card, the one I'd carried since 1985. With a sharp snap, he cut it in half. Then he cut the Visa, then the debit card. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice low. "I need those for groceries, for gas." "You do not have a car anymore," Jason said, dropping the plastic shards into the trash. "Monica sold the Lincoln this morning. We got $12,000 for it. It goes into the renovation fund. You do not need to drive, Dad." "Where would you go?" "You are retired. You are resting." I felt a phantom pain in my chest. That car was the last place I had truly felt like myself, where I could listen to my music and drive with the windows down. Now it was gone, turned into drywall and paint for a house I was not allowed to live in. As for food, Monica chimed in, walking into the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe, drinking a green smoothie that probably cost $10 to make. "We decided it is too dangerous for you to use the kitchen. You left the burner on last month. Remember?" I did not remember because it never happened. I had never left a burner on in my life. I was a logistics officer. I checked everything 3 times. It was a lie, a gaslight, to push me further into the corner of incompetence. "So no cooking," she continued with a fake sympathetic pout. "It is for your own safety. We do not want you burning the house down while we are trying to sell it." Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out a single, crisp $50 bill. He placed it on the glass table. "This is your allowance for the week," he said. $50 that covers your food and toiletries. The convenience store on the corner has everything you need. Sandwiches, soup, simple things. $50, I repeated, staring at the bill. That is $7 a day. Budget cuts. Dad, Jason said, shrugging. We all have to make sacrifices. I looked at the money. Then I looked at my son. I could have reached across the table and choked him. I could have told him about the $45 million sitting in the Apprentice Holdings Trust Fund. I could have ended this right then and there. But I saw Monica's phone on the counter, the camera lens pointing toward me. They were baiting me. They wanted me to explode. They wanted the angry, senile old man to make a scene. I picked up the $50. My hand did not shake. I folded it neatly and put it in my shirt pocket. Thank you, Jason, I said. I will make it stretch. I turned and walked out the front door before they could lock me back in the basement. I needed air. I needed to think. The walk to the convenience store was a mile long. It was a walk I had done 1,000 times in a car, but never on foot like a vagrant. The neighborhood was waking up. Sprinklers were hissing. I saw Mrs. Gable 3 doors down walking her golden retriever. She waved at me, her brow furrowing in confusion. She was probably wondering why Harrison Apprentice was walking in wrinkled clothes, looking 10 years older than he did last week. I lowered my head and pretended not to see her. I could not bear the pity. I could not bear to explain that I was a prisoner in my own life. The convenience store was cold and smelled of disinfectant. I walked the aisles calculating. A loaf of white bread, $2. A package of bologna, $4. A jar of generic peanut butter, $3. I was doing math in my head, optimizing calories per dollar, just like I used to do when planning rations for a platoon cut off from supply lines. It was a skill I never thought I would use to feed myself in the suburbs of America. I stood at the counter counting out change, while the teenage clerk looked at me with bored indifference. I bought 7 days of food for $40. I had $8 left for emergencies. I carried the plastic bag out of the store. The weight of the cheap processed food hitting my thigh with every step. As I turned the corner onto my street, I heard the roar of an engine, a deep, throaty growl that signaled horsepower and money. A car turned into my driveway. It was not a contractor's van. It was not a realtor. It was a Porsche 911. Bright, screaming red. It gleamed in the sunlight, a machine built for speed and arrogance. Jason stepped out of the driver's seat. He was wearing sunglasses, laughing into his phone. He patted the roof of the car with affection. I stopped on the sidewalk, clutching my bag of bologna sandwiches. He had sold my Lincoln for $12,000 to put into the renovation fund. And here he was driving a car that cost $120,000. He saw me. For a second, he faltered. He saw his father standing in the heat holding a plastic bag of poverty while he stood next to a monument of excess. But the shame did not last. He grinned. Investment dad. He called out, "You have to look successful to sell successful. This is going to help us move the property." I did not say a word. I just walked past him, past the red car that smelled of new leather and burning rubber. I walked into the house through the open garage door and went straight to the basement door. I locked myself in. I did not want to breathe the same air as him. Back in the dark, I sat on my mattress and ate a peanut butter sandwich. It tasted like sawdust. But as I chewed, I looked up at the ceiling. The basement was unfinished, which meant the ductwork was exposed. Galvanized steel tubes ran like arteries through the house, carrying heat and air conditioning to the rooms above and sound. I remembered a trick from the barracks. If you put your ear against the main intake vent, you could hear whispers from 3 rooms away. I dragged the 3 cardboard boxes of my belongings to the center of the room. I stacked them, creating a makeshift platform. I climbed up, my joints popping until I was eye level with the main vent. I pressed my ear against the cold metal. At first there was just the rushing sound of air. Then I heard footsteps, hard heels on wood. Monica, then softer steps. Jason. They were in the living room, directly above the intake. Did he see the car? Monica asked, her voice tinny but clear. Yeah, Jason replied. He stared at it like a dog looking at a bone. Pathetic. Can we afford the payments, Jason? The lease is $3,000 a month. Do not worry, babe, Jason said, and I could hear the clink of ice against glass. He was drinking. We are not going to be paying it for long. I spoke to the guy today. He says the market is hot. Once we get the old man out and sell this place, we pay off the car cash. We pay off everything. There was a pause. Then Monica spoke lower. What if he refuses to leave? What if he drags this out? Jason laughed. It was a cruel sound distorted by the metal duct. He won't. I talked to the doctor friend I told you about. He said at his age, with the stress, grief, and the diet we have him on, decline happens fast. I held my breath. I pressed harder against the metal. I told the guys I owe money to that I would have their cash by Christmas. Jason continued, and I will because the old man is fading. I watched him walk today. He was shuffling. He is weak, trust me, Monica. He won't last the winter. Nature is taking its course. We just have to help it along a little. I climbed down from the boxes, my heart hammering, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. They were not just waiting for me to die. They were banking on it. They had a timeline. Winter. That was 3 months away. I sat on the edge of the mattress trying to calm my breathing. My chest felt tight. Month stress. It was just stress. I needed my medication. I had a heart condition, mild arrhythmia that I had managed for years with daily pills. I reached for the pill organizer that Jason had graciously refilled for me. That morning, he had taken control of my prescriptions, along with my money, saying it was one less thing for me to worry about. I popped the Tuesday compartment open. A small white pill rolled out into my palm. I frowned. My heart medication Dioxin was a round yellow tablet. This pill was white and oval. I brought it up to the light of the single bulb. It had a code stamped on it. TV58. I did not have internet. I could not Google it, but I had a memory. I had spent years managing medical supplies. I knew pill codes. TV58 was not for the heart. It was tramadol, a painkiller, a sedative. And in high doses for an elderly man with a heart condition, it could suppress respiratory function. It could cause confusion, dizziness, lethargy. It mimicked the symptoms of dementia. If I took this, I would be stumbling. I would be slurring my words. I would look exactly like the senile, incompetent old man they were claiming I was. And if my heart acted up, I would have no protection. They were not just starving me, they were poisoning me. I looked at the white pill in my hand, a chemical weapon. I did not flush it. That would be amateur. If they found it missing, they would know I was onto them. I reached into the pocket of my trousers and pulled out a small handkerchief. I wrapped the pill carefully and tucked it deep inside the lining of my shadow box, behind the purple heart metal evidence. Then I lay back on the mattress. I closed my eyes and began to control my breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. The tactical breathing techniques I taught recruits, they wanted me to sleep. They wanted me sedated. So I would give them a show. I would stumble when they came down. I would slur my speech. I would let them think their little white pill was working. But behind the act, my mind would be sharper than ever. Jason had bought a Porsche. He had debts. He had a deadline. He had just given me the intelligence I needed. The enemy was overconfident. And that is when you strike. The walk to the park was a gauntlet. My chest felt tight. A sensation like an invisible hand squeezing my heart every few seconds. I knew what it was. It was not the tramadol I had refused to take. It was the lack of Dioxin. My arrhythmia was kicking in, fueled by stress and the starvation diet of processed meat and white bread. Every step sent a jolt of fatigue through my legs. I had to stop twice pretending to admire the neighbors' hydrangeas just to catch my breath without looking weak. The city park was my only sanctioned perimeter. Jason allowed it because it was free and kept me out of the house while potential buyers came to view the property. He told the neighbors I needed fresh air for my condition. The perfect cover for an old man shuffling aimlessly through the autumn leaves. I found my usual bench near the duck pond. It was secluded, shielded by a row of oaks, but offered a clear line of sight to the entrance. Tactical positioning. Old habits die hard. I sat down heavily, letting the cold wood seep through my thin trousers. My head swam, black spots danced in my vision. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart rate to slow down. In 4 old, 4 out 4. A young mother pushed a stroller past me. She smiled a pitying, tight-lipped smile. She saw a frail senior citizen, perhaps confused, perhaps lost. She did not see a man who used to coordinate supply drops for entire battalions. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the wind in the trees. When I opened them, a man was sitting on the other end of the bench. He was indistinguishable from the corporate crowd that flooded the park at lunch. Charcoal suit, pristine white shirt, polished shoes. He held a folded newspaper in his lap. He was staring straight ahead, watching the ducks fight over a piece of bread. He did not look at me. He did not acknowledge my presence. But I knew him not by name, but by type. He was private security. I could tell by the way he sat, spine straight, hands relaxed but ready, and by the earpiece coiled discreetly behind his ear. "Do not look at me, sir." The man said, his voice low and level, barely rising above the rustle of the leaves. "Keep watching the ducks." I froze. My heart skipped a dangerous beat. "Who are you?" "My name is Black," he said. "I work for Richard Stone." Richard Stone, my lawyer, the man who held the keys to the kingdom, the Apprentice Holdings Trust. I had not spoken to him in 5 years, not since Catherine's diagnosis. We had an agreement, total radio silence unless I initiated contact. "Mr. Stone sends his condolences." Mr. Black continued. "He saw the obituary. He has been trying to reach you, but your phone is disconnected. He sent me to verify your status." "They took my phone," I whispered, watching a Millard glide across the water. "They took everything." "We know," Mr. Black said. "We have been monitoring the situation since the funeral. We know about the basement. We know about the bank transfer. Mr. Stone is very concerned. He wants to know if you are ready to activate the Omega Protocol." The Omega Protocol, it was the nuclear option, a legal fail-aff we had designed decades ago. If activated, it would freeze all assets connected to my identity, trigger a federal audit, anyone attempting to access my funds, and deploy a private security team to extract me from any hostile environment. It was the button you pushed when the embassy was falling. I thought about it. I could say yes right now. In 10 minutes, a black SUV would pull up to the curb. I would be whisked away to a 5-star hotel. Jason would be locked out of everything. It would be over. But then I thought about the red Porsche. I thought about the conversation in the vents. Winter nature taking its course. "Not yet," I said. Mr. Black shifted slightly. "Sir, with all due respect, you look unwell. Your color is bad. We have medical staff on standby." "I need to know," I said, my voice hardening. "I need to know how deep the rot goes." If I pull the plug now, Jason claims ignorance. He claims he was just a concerned son trying to manage a difficult father. He walks away. I need him to commit. I need him to show his hand completely. Mr. Black slid the newspaper across the bench toward me. It looked casual, like he was discarding it. "Inside the sports section, there is a phone," he murmured. "Nokia untraceable. Battery life of 2 weeks. Pre-programmed with Mr. Stone's direct line. Hide it well. If you miss a check-in, we come in. No questions asked." I placed my hand on the newspaper. It felt heavy with potential. "Thank you." "There is one more thing, sir," Mr. Black said, and for the first time his voice lost its professional detachment. It sounded urgent. "Mr. Stone ran a background check on your son's financials. It is not just greed, sir. It is desperation." "What do you mean Jason owes money, a lot of money, to the Petrovic Syndicate, $2 million gambling debts, and bad crypto investments?" The interest is compounding daily. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. The Petrovic Syndicate Eastern European organized crime. They were not loan sharks. They were butchers. He is not selling the house to put you in a nursing home. Mr. Black said he needs the equity to pay the vigorous. He has until the end of the month to come up with a lump sum, or they start taking pieces. The deadline, Christmas. It all made sense. The rush to sell, the cheap renovations, the starvation. He wasn't just trying to steal my money, he was trying to buy his life with it. And me, I asked, "You are just overhead, sir." An expense he cannot afford. If he puts you in a home that costs money, he does not have. The implication hung in the air. I was not just an inconvenience. I was a financial block. As long as I was alive, as long as I needed care, I was eating into the $2 million he needed to save his skin. That is why he switched the meds, I realized aloud. It is not just to make me pliable. Mr. Black nodded almost imperceptibly. We suspect he is trying to induce a natural cardiac event. Stress plus withdrawal plus sedatives. It is a clean way to clear the board. I gripped the newspaper tight. My own son. He wasn't just a failure, he wasn't just ungrateful. He was willing to sacrifice me to clean up his mess. Sir, Mr. Black said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. Activate the protocol. Let us end this. No, I said, looking up at him. Not yet. He thinks I am a senile old man. He thinks I am prey. If I strike now, he learns nothing. He needs to believe he has won. He needs to feel the money in his hands. And then when he thinks he is safe, I will take it all away. That is dangerous, sir. I survived Fallujah's son. I said, my eyes locking onto his. I can survive my son. Mr. Black nodded once, a gesture of respect. Watch your back, sir. He turned and walked away, blending instantly into the crowd. I sat alone on the bench, the newspaper in my lap. $2 million. My son had sold his soul for $2 million, and he was willing to sell my life to redeem it. I opened the newspaper. Inside the sports section, taped securely to an advertisement for tires, was a small, black phone. I slipped it into my waistband, tucking it under my shirt. I stood up. The dizziness washed over me again, but this time I welcomed it. Let them see me stumble. Let them see me weak. Let Jason think his plan is working. I walked back toward the house, toward the basement, toward the son who wanted me dead. I was walking into a trap. I knew that. But Jason didn't know that the mouse he had caught, that was actually the one baiting the trap. He wanted an inheritance. I would give him one, but it wouldn't be money. It would be a lesson in consequences. And class was about to begin. The basement at 2 a.m. was a tomb. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic dripping of condensation from a pipe in the corner and the settling of the house's foundation. I lay on the thin mattress, staring up into the darkness, my body rigid, my mind racing. I had prepared the stage. Now I just had to wait for the audience. Earlier that evening, Jason had come down with a glass of water and the white pill. He had watched me with hawk-like intensity, making sure I put it in my mouth. I had performed the sleight of hand I learned from a magician in a Saigon bar 40 years ago, sliding the pill between my cheek and gum while swallowing a mouthful of water. I'd opened my mouth to show him it was empty. He had smiled, satisfied that his father was duly medicated and would be unconscious till noon. As soon as he left, I spat the bitter pill into a tissue and flushed it down the basement utility sink. Then I set the trap. I took my old leather field journal, the one I'd carried through 3 deployments, and placed it inside the nightstand drawer I had salvaged from the trash pile. It was not hidden deeply. It was hidden just enough to look like a secret. Inside, on the very last page, I had written a sequence of numbers and a bank name. It looked like the key to a fortune. In reality, it was the key to a lesson. Now I waited. I regulated my breathing, deepening it adding a slight rasp to mimic the heavy sleep of the sedated. I lay on my side, one arm dangling off the mattress, my back to the stairs. At 2:15, the handle of the door at the top of the stairs turned. It was slow, deliberate. There was no click of the deadbolt because he had unlocked it earlier, silently preparing for this excursion. A beam of light cut through the darkness. It swept across the concrete floor, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It tracked over the boxes of my belongings, over the cold furnace, and finally landed on me. I did not flinch. I kept my breathing steady, a rhythmic snoring rumble that vibrated in my chest. Footsteps descended the wooden stairs. They were soft. Jason was wearing socks. He was moving with a stealth I did not know he possessed, driven by a desperation that sharpened his clumsy instincts. He reached the bottom of the stairs and paused. I could feel his eyes on me. He was checking to see if the tramadol had done its job. I let out a long, shuddering breath and twitched my hand slightly, a common reaction to deep sedation. He moved. He did not come to me. He went straight to the boxes. I listened to the rustle of cardboard. He was rifling through my past. He pushed aside the photo albums of his own childhood without a second glance. He ignored the letters Catherine had written me during the war. He was looking for paper. He was looking for numbers. I heard the clinking of metal. He had found the shadow box again. He was digging through my medals, probably checking for hidden compartments or keys. The disrespect burned in my gut, a hot coal of anger. Those medals represented men who had died, friends I had lost. To him, they were just obstacles in his search for cash. He moved to the makeshift nightstand. This was it. The drawer slid open with a rusty screech. I heard the intake of his breath. He had found the leather journal. I risked opening my eyes a fraction, just a slit in the darkness. The beam of his flashlight was focused on the book. He was flipping through the pages rapidly, ignoring the tactical notes and supply coordinates from decades ago. He wanted the end. He stopped. The flashlight beam held steady. He had found the last page. I knew exactly what he was looking at. In my shaky handwriting, I had written First National Bank Box, 7/18 code 924. I could hear the smile in his breath, a low huff of triumph. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The flash of the camera illuminated the basement for a split second, a lightning strike in the gloom. He took one picture, then another to be sure. He thought he had found the pot of gold. He thought Box 7/18 contained the millions I had hidden, the bearer bonds, the cash, the deeds to properties. He had no way of knowing that Box 714 contained absolutely nothing of monetary value. It held a stack of declassified logistical reports from 1991 that looked impressively official but meant nothing. And underneath them, a stack of promissory notes I had forged years ago showing massive debts to fictional contractors. If he opened that box, he would think I was broke. He would think I was drowning in debt just like him. It was a decoy designed to confuse the enemy, to make them hesitate, to make them reveal their true intentions before they realized the target was a ghost. But tonight he just saw the key. He saw salvation from the Petrovic syndicate. He put the journal back in the drawer exactly as he had found it. He closed the drawer carefully. He walked over to where I lay. The flashlight beam washed over my face. I kept my eyes shut, my mouth slightly open, my breathing heavy and wet. He stood over me for a long moment. I could smell his fear, his sweat, the stale scent of alcohol seeping from his pores. "Got you," he whispered. It was barely audible, a breath of air against the silence. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss that chilled my blood more than the damp basement air. "I have the code, old man. I do not need you to tell me where the money is anymore. I just need your authority." He straightened up. "Tomorrow," he whispered to the darkness. "Tomorrow I make you sign the power of attorney by force if I have to." and then he let the sentence hang in the air unfinished. But the implication was clear. Once he had access to the box, once he had the power of attorney, I was just loose luggage. I was expendable. He turned and walked back to the stairs. His steps were lighter now, faster. He had what he came for. He climbed the stairs and closed the door. I heard the deadbolt slide home, locking me back in my cell. I opened my eyes and sat up in the darkness. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my mind was ice cold. Jason thought he had won. He thought he had found the weakness in my armor. He didn't realize he had just swallowed the poison pill. He was going to force the power of attorney signing tomorrow. He was going to bring a notary or a lawyer, probably someone crooked, to make it official. He wanted legal control over a fortune that he couldn't access and a debt that didn't exist. I reached for the burner phone under my pillow. I didn't make a call. Not yet. I just checked the battery full charge. Tomorrow was going to be a performance. I needed to be weak. I needed to be confused. I needed to give him exactly what he wanted so he would walk confidently off the cliff I had built for him. I lay back down, but I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, imagining the red Porsche in the driveway, the debts piling up, the desperation clawing at my son's throat. He said my good life was over. He was wrong. His life was over. He just didn't know it yet. The countdown had begun. The smell of bacon was the first thing that hit me when they unlocked the basement door at 8 a.m. in the morning. It was not the cheap microwave bacon they usually ate, but the thick-cut hickory, smoked kind that Catherine used to make on Sunday mornings. The scent drifted down the stairs, wrapping around the cold, damp air of my prison, like a false promise. Jason stood at the top of the stairs. He was wearing a polo shirt and khakis, trying to look like a respectable suburban husband instead of a man who had broken into his father's private journal 5 hours ago. "Good morning, Dad." He called out, his voice bright and chipper. "Come on up." Monica made breakfast. We thought we would have a nice family meal. I climbed the stairs, slowly gripping the railing, with a hand that I deliberately allowed to tremble. I needed to sell the performance. I needed them to see a man who was breaking down physically and mentally. The living room was transformed. The boxes were pushed to the walls. And the dining table was set with the good china, the Wedgwood plates that Catherine only brought out for Thanksgiving. There was a picture of orange juice, a stack of pancakes, and a platter of eggs. It was a feast. It was a bribe. "Sit down, Dad," Monica said, pulling out a chair. "You look thin. You need to eat." I sat down. The chair felt too soft after a week on a mattress over concrete. I looked at the food. I knew I should eat while I could, but my stomach churned with suspicion. They were fattening the calf before the slaughter. "We've been so busy with the house preparations. We forgot to take care of some important administrative things," Jason said, pouring me a glass of juice. His hand brushed mine, and his skin was clammy. He was nervous. The adrenaline from his late-night raid was still pumping through him. Monica placed a stack of papers next to my plate. It was a thick pile, maybe 20 pages clipped together. "We found a great health insurance plan for you," Monica said, smiling. "It is the VIP package for Sunny Meadows. It covers everything. Physical therapy, private room nurses on call 24/7, but the enrollment window closes today." She tapped the top page. "We just need your signature here, here, and here. Then we can submit it and you are all set." I looked at the papers. The top sheet was indeed a generic medical enrollment form, but it was slightly askew. Underneath it, peeking out just a fraction of an inch, was a document with a different font, a heavier bond paper. I picked up a fork, my hand shaking violently. The fork clattered against the china plate, making a loud ringing sound. "I am sorry," I mumbled, dropping the fork. "My hands, they are so weak today." "Let me help you," Jason said, but he didn't reach for the fork. He reached for a pen. He clicked it open and shoved it into my trembling hand. "You do not need to eat right now, Dad. Just sign. Then you can relax." I leaned forward, squinting at the papers. I didn't have my reading glasses. Jason had thrown them away 3 days ago, claiming they were broken. I cannot see the letters? I said, my voice quavering. It is all blurry. Is this for the doctor? Yes, Dad. It is for the doctor, Monica said, her voice tightening. Just sign on the line right there. I moved the pen toward the paper. Jason leaned in, holding his breath. I could feel his desperation radiating off him like heat. He needed this. He needed legal authority to access Box 7014. He needed to present the power of attorney to the bank manager so he could loot what he thought was a fortune. But just as the pen touched the paper, I sneezed. A loud, violent sneeze that jerked my hand away. The pen skidded across the table. Oh, excuse me, I said, wiping my nose with a napkin. The dust downstairs, it is getting to me. Jason picked up the pen. His jaw was clenched. Sign it, Dad. Now. I picked up the stack of papers, pretending to try and straighten them. In doing so, I let the top sheet slide off. The document underneath was exposed. In bold black letters across the top, it read, General Durable Power of Attorney. It wasn't a medical form. It was a total surrender. It gave Jason Apprentice full legal authority over my finances, my real estate, my medical decisions, and my estate. If I signed this, he could sell the house, empty the bank accounts, and put me in a state-run hospice facility by noon. I blinked, staring at the words, as if trying to decipher a foreign language. Power of attorney. I read slowly, sounding out the syllables. This does not say insurance, Jason. This says power of attorney. Jason snatched the papers from my hand, putting them back in a pile. It is the same thing, Dad. It gives us the power to talk to the insurance company for you. They won't talk to us otherwise because of privacy laws. It is standard procedure. I shook my head slowly. Catherine always said, never sign what you cannot read. My eyes are too bad today, son. I cannot sign this. Jason slammed his hand down on the table. The orange juice pitcher jumped, spilling sticky liquid onto the tablecloth. Stop stalling, he shouted. His face turned mottled red. We are trying to help you. We are trying to save your life, you ungrateful old man. Sign the damn paper. I shrank back in my chair, playing the part of the terrified victim. But inside I was calculating. I needed a witness. If I signed this here alone, it would be my word against theirs. I needed someone else in the room, someone who could be subpoenaed later, to testify that I was coerced, or at least that the signing happened under duress. I do not feel comfortable, I stammered. I need someone to read it to me. A professional. Monica scoffed. You want us to hire a lawyer just to read a form? Do you know how much that costs? I pushed the plate away. I cannot sign. Not without a notary or a lawyer. Someone to tell me it is okay. Jason stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward. He loomed over me, his fists clenched at his sides. The vein in his forehead was throbbing. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. He raised his hand. It was a reflex, a spasm of violence born of frustration. He was going to hit me. He was going to strike his 70-year-old father because I wouldn't hand over my life fast enough. I flinched, bracing for the blow. I didn't move to defend myself. Let him hit me. Let him leave a bruise. A bruise was evidence. A bruise was a felony. Jason, Monica screamed. She lunged across the table, grabbing his wrist just as it began to descend. Stop, she hissed. Think if you mark him, the doctor will see. If he has bruises, they will investigate. We cannot sell the house if there is an elder abuse investigation. Jason froze. His hand hovered inches from my face, trembling with the effort to hold back. He looked at his fist, then at me. He saw the fear in my eyes, but he missed the steel behind it. He lowered his hand slowly, breathing hard through his nose like a bull. Fine, he spat. You want a lawyer? You want it to be official? Fine. He turned to Monica. Call Silvers. Tell him to get over here tomorrow morning. Tell him to bring his stamp and his notary seal. Tell him we are paying double if he comes on a Sunday. Monica nodded, pulling out her phone. Silvers. I knew the name. He was a strip mall lawyer known for chasing ambulances and helping slumlords evict tenants. He was dirty, perfect. A dirty lawyer was still a lawyer. He was still an officer of the court. If things went sideways, he would be the first to flip to save his own license. Jason leaned down until his face was inches from mine. Tomorrow? He whispered. Silvers is coming tomorrow at 10:00. You are going to sit here, you are going to smile, and you are going to sign that paper. And if you hesitate, if you pretend you cannot read if you sneeze, I will put you in the ground next to Mom myself. Do you understand? I nodded my lower lip, trembling. Yes, Jason. I understand. Good. Now get out of my sight. He pointed to the basement door. I stood up, my legs genuinely shaky now from the adrenaline dump. I didn't look at the food. I didn't look at the papers. I shuffled toward the hallway. As I reached the door, I heard Jason pick up his phone. Yeah, it is me, he said into the receiver, his voice changing instantly to a desperate plead. I know the deadline. I have the account number. I just need the authorization. Tomorrow, yes, tomorrow afternoon, I will wire the first installment. Just tell Mr. Petrovic to be patient. I closed the basement door behind me. I heard the lock slide home. I walked down the stairs into the dark. I sat on my mattress and let out a long, slow breath. I had bought myself 24 hours. Jason was bringing a lawyer. He was escalating the game. He thought he was boxing me in, but he didn't realize he was bringing me exactly what I needed. He was bringing an audience for the final act. I pulled the burner phone from the lining of the shadow box. I waited until the footsteps upstairs moved away from the vent. Then I dialed Richard Stone. It is time, I whispered when he answered. Harrison Stone's voice was sharp, alert. Are you safe for now? I said. But the timeline has moved up. They are bringing a lawyer tomorrow morning at 10. They are forcing the power of attorney. Do you want us to intervene? Stone asked. We can have the police there in 5 minutes. No, I said not yet. If the police come now, Jason claims it is a family dispute. He claims I am confused. We need undeniable proof of intent. We need him to admit what he is doing on record in front of a witness. What is the plan I am going to sign? I said, Harrison, to not. I am going to sign. I interrupted, but I am going to make a scene first. I am going to make sure this lawyer Silvers remembers every second of it. I need you to be ready when I give the signal. I want the accounts frozen. I want the police on standby, and I want you to send Mr. Black to the house. He will be there. Stone promised. What is the signal? I paused, thinking about the logistics. I needed something chaotic, something that would break the flow of the meeting and give me a chance to move. Hot water, I said. What, just be ready, I said. 10:00 a.m. tomorrow. It ends tomorrow. I hung up and hid the phone. I lay back on the mattress, listening to the house settle. I was hungry, I was tired, and I was terrified. But for the first time since Catherine died, I smiled in the dark. My son wanted a signature. I was going to give him one he would never forget. The doorbell rang at exactly 10:00, cutting through the thick tension in the living room, like a knife. I was sitting at the head of the dining table wearing the suit I had buried Catherine in just over a week ago. It hung loosely on my frame now, a testament to the meals I had missed and the stress that had eaten away at me. Inside the breast pocket of my jacket, nestled against my heart, was the burner phone. I had set it to record 10 minutes ago. The microphone was positioned perfectly just below the lapel. Every breath, every rustle of paper, every lie was being captured. Jason opened the door and ushered in a man who looked exactly like the kind of lawyer you hire when you want to bury the truth on a Sunday morning. Mr. Silvers was short, with a sheen of sweat already glistening on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. He wore a suit that was too tight and carried a briefcase that looked like it had been dragged across a parking lot. He did not look at me. He looked at Jason with the conspiratorial glance of a co-conspirator. "Here is the patient," Jason said, gesturing toward me as if I were a piece of furniture. "He is lucid, but he gets confused easily. We just need to get this done quickly before he gets tired." Silvers nodded and sat down opposite me. He pulled a heavy stamp and a seal from his bag, placing them on the table with a thud that sounded like a gavel. Then he laid out the document. The General Durable Power of Attorney. It was the same one from yesterday, but now it had a golden seal at the bottom waiting to be embossed. Mr. Apprentice Silvers said, his voice oily and rushed. "I understand you wish to grant your son full authority over your estate for medical and financial management. Is that correct?" I looked at Jason. He was standing behind the lawyer, his arms crossed, his eyes boring into me. It was a threat, a silent promise of violence if I deviated from the script. Monica was in the kitchen pretending to wipe down counters, but watching us like a hawk. I cleared my throat. "I need some water," I said, my voice raspy. "Hot water for tea." "My throat is dry." Jason rolled his eyes. "Get him some tea, Monica. Let us keep this moving." Monica filled a mug with water from the instant hot tap and slammed it down in front of me. Steam rose from the cup, curling around my face. It was scalding. Perfect. I wrapped my shaking hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my cold fingers. I looked at Silvers. "Mr. Lawyer," I said, projecting my voice slightly so the phone in my pocket would catch every syllable. "I just want to make sure I understand. If I sign this, Jason can sell my house, right?" Silver sighed, tapping his pen on the table. "Yes, Mr. Apprentice. It gives him the authority to liquidate assets to pay for your care and the money." I continued playing the part of the worried miser. "The house is worth $400,000. When he sells it, do I get half? I want to put half in my savings account for emergencies." Jason laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. "Dad, you do not need savings. We are taking care of you. The money goes into the estate account. But I want my share." I insisted, leaning forward. I pitched my voice to sound whiny, annoying, the exact tone that I knew triggered Jason's temper. "I worked for 40 years. If you sell the house, I want 50%. That is fair. Catherine would want me to have 50%. Jason snapped. The mask of the concerned son slipped off entirely. He leaned over the table, invading my space, his face inches from mine. The smell of stale coffee and aggression coming off him was overpowering. "Forget about the 50%, old man," he hissed. "You are not getting a dime. Do you understand? Not a single penny." I looked at him wide-eyed, feigning shock, but internally I was cheering. He was taking the bait. "But why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It is my house. Why wouldn't I get the money? Is it for the nursing home?" Jason slammed his hand on the table, making the lawyer jump. "It is not for the nursing home," he shouted, losing all control. "The nursing home is a lie, Dad. There is no Sunny Meadows. You are going to a state facility, the cheapest one I can find, because I need that money." Silvers looked up, alarmed. "Jason, perhaps we should not." "Shut up, Silvers," Jason barked, cutting him off. He turned back to me, his eyes wild. "You want to know where the money is going? It is going to pay for your mistakes, for 40 years of you being a mediocre, useless father who never gave me enough." I sat back, letting his words wash over me, recording every single venomous syllable. "So you are taking it all?" I asked softly. "To pay your debts? Yes." Jason spat, leaning in so close his spittle hit my cheek. "I am taking it all, every cent. This money is to pay for the stupidity of you coddling me and then leaving me with nothing. You owe me this. Now sign the damn paper, or I will break your fingers and sign it for you." There it was. The confession, the threat, the admission of theft and coercion. It was all there captured on a digital file in my pocket. He had just handed me the keys to his own cell. I looked at Silvers. The lawyer was pale. He knew this was illegal. He knew he was witnessing a felony extortion. But he also knew Jason was paying him double. He stayed silent, pushing the paper toward me. "Sign here, Mr. Sign here, Apprentice," he muttered, refusing to look at me. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking violently now, not from acting, but from the sheer adrenaline coursing through my veins. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at the mug of steaming water. I am so nervous. I stammered. I feel dizzy. I reached for the mug with my left hand while holding the pen with my right. I let my elbows spasm. It was a movement I'd practiced in my mind a dozen times. "Oops!" I cried out. My arm jerked. The mug flew across the table. It wasn't a splash, it was a deluge. 12-0 of near-boiling water hit Silver's square in the lap. The lawyer screamed. It was a high-pitched sound like a wounded animal. He scrambled backward his chair, tipping over, sending him sprawling onto the floor, clutching his crotch. The table was flooded. The power of attorney document was soaked, the ink running instantly, turning the legal text into a black smear. "You stupid old fool!" Jason roared, lunging at me. Monica shrieked from the kitchen, dropping a plate. It shattered, adding to the cacophony. I scrambled out of my chair, putting the table between me and Jason. "I am sorry. I am sorry." My hand slipped. Jason was ignoring the lawyer, who was rolling on the floor, groaning in pain. He was trying to salvage the document, dabbing at it frantically with a napkin. But it was ruined. The paper was dissolving. "You did that on purpose," Jason yelled, his eyes murderous. "No. No," I cried, backing toward the hallway. "I need a towel. I will get a towel." I turned and ran. I didn't shuffle. I didn't limp. I moved with a speed that surprised even me. I ducked into the hallway bathroom and slammed the door, locking it instantly. Outside, I heard Jason pounding on the wood. "Open this door! Open it right now!" I ignored him. My hands were steady now. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket. I stopped the recording. Save? Send? The file uploaded to the cloud server Richard Stone and I had set up. Then I opened the text message app. My thumbs flew across the keypad. Now activate Omega. I hit send. I leaned back against the door, listening to the chaos outside. Silvers was threatening to sue. Monica was crying. Jason was throwing his body weight against the bathroom door, the wood groaning under the assault. He thought he was breaking in to punish a clumsy old man. He didn't know he was trying to break into a fortress that had just called in an airstrike. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back wasn't the grieving widower from the funeral. He wasn't the prisoner from the basement. He was Harrison Apprentice, military contractor, and the extraction team was on the way. I took a deep breath. Let them pound on the door. Let them scream. In 10 minutes, their world was going to end. The bathroom was a small fortress of porcelain and tile, but the door was just hollow core wood. Every time Jason threw his shoulder against it, the frame shuddered, sending fine dust drifting down from the molding. "Open this door, Dad!" Jason screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "You are going to pay for the lawyer's medical bills. You are going to pay for everything." I sat on the edge of the bathtub, ignoring the assault on the door. My hands were steady as I held the burner phone. It buzzed again. Not a text this time, but an email notification. Subject, Apprentice, J. Full Dossier. Priority read. It was from Mr. Black. I tapped the screen and a PDF file opened. I expected to see gambling debts. I expected to see loan shark markers. I expected the messy, desperate financial footprint of a man who lived beyond his means. What I saw was infinitely worse. It was a flowchart, a complex web of shell companies, fake LLCs, and offshore accounts. At the center of it was my son's name. Jason wasn't just a gambler, he was a predator. I scrolled down, reading the summary, written in the dry, clinical language of a forensic accountant. Subject is the primary architect of Horizon Equity Partners, a fraudulent real estate investment trust, a Ponzi scheme. My son was selling phantom properties. He was taking money from retirees, from teachers, from people just like Catherine, and using it to fund his Porsche, his suits, and his arrogance. He was paying off old investors with new money, keeping the illusion alive while skimming the top for himself. But the scheme was collapsing. The file detailed it all. The new investments had dried up 3 months ago. The dividends were overdue. The investors were asking questions. And then I saw the FBI watermark on the second page. Active investigation. Case number 89442. Status monitoring. The feds were watching him. They knew everything, but they hadn't moved yet. Why I read on. Awaiting confirmation of final asset liquidation to establish money laundering intent. They were waiting for him to move the money. They were waiting for him to try and wash a large sum so they could nail him not just for fraud but for federal money laundering. I lowered the phone, my stomach turning over the house. He wasn't selling the house to pay off the Petrovic syndicate to save his life. That was a lie, or at least only a half-truth. He was selling the house to create a clean source of funds. He needed a legitimate transaction to mix his dirty money into. He was going to use the sale of his dead mother's home to wash the money he had stolen from innocent people. He was going to use me as his mule. I looked at the door where Jason was currently kicking the lock. I had spent 40 years thinking my son was soft. I thought he was lazy, entitled, a little selfish. I had made excuses for him. I blamed myself for working too much. I blamed society. I blamed the schools. But he wasn't soft. He was rotten. He was a professional criminal. He had looked me in the eye at his mother's funeral and calculated how much my grief was worth. He had looked at my medals, my service, my life, and seen nothing but a liquidity event. A tear leaked out of my eye, hot and angry. It wasn't for me. It was for Catherine. She had loved him so much. She had defended him every time I tried to be tough. He is just finding his way, Harrison. She used to say he has a good heart. She died believing that. Thank God she died believing that. I wiped the tear away. That was the last one. The father who made excuses was gone. The husband who kept the peace was gone. In this bathroom, staring at the glowing evidence of my son's moral bankruptcy. Only the contractor remained, and the contractor knew how to deal with a compromised asset. You don't fix it, you don't salvage it, you neutralize it. I heard a crack. The wood around the lock splintered. One more kick, and he would be in. I stood up. I put the phone back in my pocket, ensuring it was secure. I buttoned my suit jacket. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired. Yes, my skin was gray, my eyes sunken, but the fear was gone. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. You don't fear a man who is already a walking corpse. You just pity him. The pounding stopped for a moment. I heard heavy breathing on the other side. "This is it, Dad." Jason panted. "Last chance. Open the door and sign the digital copy on my phone. Or I come in there and drag you out." "I am not signing, Jason," I said, my voice calm, carrying through the wood. "And you know why? Because Horizon Equity Partners is insolvent." Silence. Absolute dead silence on the other side of the door. "What did you say?" Jason whispered. "I know about the investors, Jason." I continued, leaning closer to the door. "I know about the phantom condos in Florida. I know about the FBI surveillance team that has been tracking your IP address for 6 months." I heard a sound like a wounded animal, a gasp of pure terror. "Who told you that he screamed? Who have you been talking to?" "It does not matter," I said. It is over. The game is rigged, son. And you lost. There was a pause, a long, heavy beat, where the only sound was the hum of the bathroom fan. I imagined him standing there, his world crumbling, his lies exposed. I wondered if he would run. I wondered if he would fall to his knees and beg for help. But I had underestimated his desperation. A cornered rat doesn't beg. It bites. He hit the door with a force that shook the walls. You think you know, he roared. You think you can stop me. I am not going to prison because of you. I am not losing everything because you decided to grow a spine at 70. Crack. The door frame gave way. Splinters flew into the bathroom. He kicked again. The door swung open, banging violently against the bathtub. Jason stood in the doorway. He was disheveled. His tie was loose, his hair wild. His eyes were wide and manic, filled with a terrifying resolve. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like a man who had decided that murder was an acceptable line item on a balance sheet. He held a duffel bag in one hand. Monica stood behind him, pale and shaking, clutching her purse. You know too much? Jason said, his voice devoid of any familial warmth. That changes things. We aren't waiting for tomorrow. He threw the duffel bag at me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. Pack, he ordered. Whatever fits in there. You are leaving now. Where are we going? I asked, not moving. Somewhere quiet, Jason said, stepping into the bathroom. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep with bruising force. Somewhere nobody asks questions. Somewhere you can rot without talking to the feds. The car is running, Jason, Monica hissed from the hallway. We have to go. If he knows, then they might be coming. Shut up, Jason yelled back, not taking his eyes off me. He is bluffing. He is just an old man with a big mouth. He yanked me forward. I stumbled but caught my footing. Move, old man. He spat, shoving me toward the door. Your ride is here, and this time it is a one-way ticket. I looked at him one last time. I looked for the boy I taught to ride a bike. I looked for the teenager I taught to shave. He wasn't there. There was only a criminal who needed to dispose of a witness. Okay, I said softly. I am ready. I wasn't talking about the trip. I was talking about the end. He thought he was taking me to my doom. He didn't know he was driving me to his execution. I picked up the empty duffel bag. I didn't put anything in it. I didn't need clothes where I was going. I just needed to survive the next 20 minutes. Let's go, Jason said, pushing me into the hallway. Time to say goodbye to the good life, Dad. I walked ahead of him down the stairs through the living room, past the ruin of the breakfast table. I walked out the front door into the bright, blinding sunlight. The red Porsche was gone. In its place was a rented cargo van, windowless, anonymous, perfect, I thought. A prison transport. I climbed into the back seat. Jason slammed the door. I heard the locks engage. He got into the driver's seat. Monica got in the passenger side. The engine roared to life. We pulled out of the driveway, leaving the house behind. My house, Catherine's house. I didn't look back. I looked forward at the back of my son's head. Drive fast, Jason, I thought. Drive as fast as you can. You are running out of road. The ride was silent at first, except for the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the frantic tapping of Jason's fingers on the steering wheel. I sat in the back seat of the rented van, watching the back of my son's head. He was driving too fast, weaving through traffic with the reckless desperation of a man who thinks he can outrun his own shadow. We had left the manicured lawns of our suburb miles ago. The scenery outside the tinted windows shifted from comfortable residential streets to the concrete sprawl of the highway, and then to the desolate stretch of industrial parks and forgotten strip malls that lined the edge of the county. I knew this route. I had mapped supply lines through worse terrain than this. We were heading toward the marshlands, the area where the city dumped everything it did not want to look at anymore. Monica shifted in the passenger seat, turning to look at me. The fear she had shown at the house had hardened into something ugly, a cruel arrogance born of relief. She thought they had escaped. She thought the problem was sitting in the back seat, contained and neutralized. "You are going to like this place, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with false cheer. "It is quiet way out in the country. You will have plenty of friends to talk to, people your own age." She paused, waiting for a reaction. When I did not answer, she smirked. "Just do not think about calling us." She added, her tone sharpening. "We are changing our numbers tonight, and do not try to write letters. The mail at these places is unreliable. You are on your own now. Consider it a fresh start." I looked at her, really looked at her. For years, I had tried to see the good in her because Jason loved her. I had ignored the snide comments, the greedy glances, the way she rolled her eyes when Catherine told a story. I had told myself she was just young, just ambitious. But sitting there in that van, I saw her clearly. She was hollow, a parasite attached to a host that was slowly dying. "You are right, Monica," I said, my voice steady and calm, no longer pitching it to the quavering tremolo of a confused old man. "It is a fresh start." Jason glanced at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes narrowed. He sensed the change, the sudden lack of fear, but his mind was too cluttered with panic to process it. "Shut up, Dad," he snapped. "Just sit there and be quiet. We are almost there." I looked down at my hands resting on my knees. For the last week, I had forced them to shake. I had cultivated a tremor, a weakness, a physical manifestation of the decline they wanted to see. I took a breath and let it out slowly. I willed my muscles to still. The shaking stopped. My hands became steady, strong. These were hands that had signed contracts worth millions. Hands that had shaken the hands of generals and warlords. They were not the hands of a victim. I reached up and adjusted my collar, buttoning the top button of my shirt that had come loose in the bathroom struggle. I smoothed the lapels of my jacket. I checked my watch, a reflex from a lifetime of synchronized operations. ETA 2 minutes. I sat up straighter. I rolled my shoulders back, shedding the hunch of the defeated widower hour. I crossed my legs. I was not a prisoner being transported to a cell. I was a CEO being driven to a board meeting. Jason took a sharp turn onto a gravel road. The van bounced violently. Dust billowed up around the windows, obscuring the view. We were deep in the nowhere now. The trees were scrubby and gray, choked with vines. "Where is this place?" Jason, I asked. My voice was different now. It had depth. It had command. It was the voice I used when a shipment was late or a contractor was trying to cut corners. Jason flinched. He looked in the mirror again, and this time I held his gaze. I did not blink. "It is a state facility," he muttered, unnerved. "Green Valley, it is. It is temporary. Just until we get the money." Green Valley. I knew it. It was not a facility. It was a warehouse for the indigent, a place where the state sent people who had no names, no family, and no money. It had been cited 5 times for health code violations in the last year alone. It was a death sentence. "You are taking me to a place where people go to die," I stated. "Not a question of fact. It is all we can afford." Jason yelled, slamming his hand on the dashboard. "Because of you, if you had just signed the paper, we could have done this the nice way. You forced me to do this. I did not force you to steal $9 million, Jason," I said coldly. "I did not force you to build a Ponzi scheme. I did not force you to betray your family. You did that all on your own." Jason slammed on the brakes. The van skidded on the gravel, fishtailing slightly before coming to a halt in a cloud of dust. He turned around in his seat, his face twisted with fury. "Stop talking!" he screamed. "Stop acting like you know what is happening. You are nothing. You are a broke, senile old man who is about to be left in a dump. You have no power here." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. I looked at the terror behind the rage. "I have all the power, Jason," I said softly. Because I am the only one in this van who is not going to prison. Monica laughed a high-pitched, nervous sound. He is delusional, Jason. Just drive. Get him out of here. Jason turned back to the wheel. He gunned the engine, the tires spinning in the gravel before finding traction. We shot forward, moving deeper into the woods. Up ahead through the trees, I saw a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Beyond it was a squat gray building with barred windows. Green Valley. It looked more like a minimum security prison than a care facility. This is it, Monica said, reaching for her purse. End of the line, Dad. Jason slowed down, approaching the main gate. It was a rusted metal barrier operated by a keypad. He rolled down his window, punching in a code he had probably bribed someone to get. The gate groaned and began to slide open. Jason smiled. It was a grim, satisfied smile. He thought he had made it. He thought he was seconds away from dumping the evidence and driving off into the sunset. He started to accelerate, but then he slammed on the brakes so hard, my seatbelt locked, cutting into my chest. Monica screamed, bracing her hands against the dashboard. "What the hell?" Jason shouted. I looked out the windshield, blocking the road. Just past the gate were two massive black SUVs. They were parked side by side, forming a steel wall. Their windows were tinted impenetrable. They did not look like police cars. They looked like government. They looked like military. Jason honked the horn and loud. "Move!" he yelled, leaning out the window. "Get out of the way!" The SUVs did not move. They sat there silent and ominous, engines idling. "Who is that?" Monica whispered, her voice trembling. "Jason, who is that? I do not know," Jason yelled. "Some idiot's blocking the road." He put the van in reverse, intending to back up and turn around. But as he looked in the rearview mirror, his face went pale. A third SUV had pulled up behind us, blocking the retreat. We were boxed in. Jason panicked. He locked the doors. What is going on? Is this Petravic? Did they find us? He thought it was the mob. He thought the loan sharks had come to collect. He reached under his seat and pulled out a tire iron, clutching it like a lifeline. I sat calmly in the back seat. I unbuckled my seatbelt. The click was loud in the sudden silence of the cabin. "It is not Petravic, Jason," I said, smoothing my tie. Jason spun around wild-eyed. "How do you know? Who is it?" I reached for the door handle. "It is the Omega team," I said. I pulled the handle. The door, which Jason had thought was locked, opened easily. I had unlocked it manually moments ago while they were screaming at the windshield. I stepped out of the van. The gravel crunched under my dress shoes. The air smelled of pine needles and approaching rain. The doors of the SUVs opened in unison. Men in tactical gear stepped out. They did not have guns drawn, but their hands were hovering near their holsters. They moved with precision, with discipline. From the lead SUV, a man in a suit stepped out. He was older, with silver hair and a posture that demanded respect. Richard Stone. And beside him, standing tall and imposing, was Mr. Black. Jason scrambled out of the driver's side, waving the tire iron. "Stay back," he screamed. I will." He stopped. He looked at the men surrounding him. He looked at the SUVs. And then he looked at me, standing calmly by the open door of the van, no longer the frail old man he thought he knew. "Dad." He whispered, confusion wearing with fear. What is this?" I looked at my son. I looked at the man who had tried to bury me. "This," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the clearing, "is the end of your good life, Jason." I nodded to Mr. Black. "Secure them," I ordered. The team moved in. The gravel dust settled slowly around the black SUVs, creating a haze in the humid afternoon air. Jason stood frozen near the front of the van, the tire iron hanging loosely from his hand like a forgotten toy. He looked at the tactical team surrounding us, then at the silver-haired man, approaching with the confidence of a general, and finally at the uniformed officer stepping out from behind the lead vehicle. It was Sheriff Miller, the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the county. Jason dropped the tire iron. It hit the dirt with a dull thud. His face was a mask of confusion and rapidly dawning terror. But his arrogance, that survival instinct of the narcissist, tried to assert itself one last time. He puffed out his chest, pointing a shaking finger at the men blocking his path. "What is the meaning of this?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "You cannot block a public road. We are in the middle of a family emergency. My father is having a medical episode. I am taking him to a care facility." Richard Stone walked forward until he was 3 FT from my son. He did not look at Jason with anger. He looked at him with the dispassionate boredom of a man who has crushed bigger insects than Jason Apprentice before breakfast. He adjusted his silk tie and pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. "There is no medical episode," Mr. Apprentice Stone said, his voice smooth and projecting clearly in the silence of the clearing. "And this is not a care facility. It is a dumping ground. And you are not taking your father anywhere ever again." Jason blinked, sweat stinging his eyes. "Who are you? You have no right to interfere. This is a family matter." He turned to the sheriff. "Sheriff, tell them my father has dementia. He is not in his right mind. He is liable to hurt himself. I have power of attorney." He reached into his pocket to pull out the soggy, ruined paper I had sabotaged earlier, but stopped realizing how pathetic it would look. "I am Richard Stone," the lawyer said. "I represent the Apprentice Military Logistics Trust, and as of 10 minutes ago, I have executed a federal emergency injunction, freezing every asset connected to the Apprentice name." Jason laughed, but it sounded like a choke. "What trust? My dad is a retired middle manager. He does not have a trust. He has a checking account with $40,000 that I already secured." Stone smiled. It was a shark smile. "Your father is the sole beneficiary and managing director of a $45 million private equity fund, Jason. The $40,000 you stole was his petty cash." I watched Jason's face. The blood drained from it so fast I thought he might faint. He looked at me standing by the van, tore my suit jacket, buttoned my posture straight. He looked for the confused old man he had bullied for a week. He did not find him. $45 million, Jason whispered. Monica scrambled out of the passenger seat, her heels sinking into the mud. She looked at me with wide, greedy eyes. "Dad, is that true? You have millions. Why didn't you tell us we could have taken care of you better?" The audacity was breathtaking. Even at the edge of the abyss, she was still calculating. But Stone was not finished. He took a step closer to Jason, holding up the document. "You were planning to sell the house on Oak Street," Stone continued. "You told your creditors you would have the equity by Christmas. You thought because your mother passed, the deed went to you." "Yes," Jason stammered. "I am the heir. I am the only son." "It is my house now," RSO said, dropping the word like a hammer. "The house on Oak Street was never your mother's to give. Catherine Apprentice held a life estate interest only. The title, the actual ownership, belongs to the Apprentice Trust. Your father bought that house cash in 1982 and placed it in the trust specifically to protect it from people like you. I saw the moment Jason's world fractured. The red Porsche, the debts, the Petrovic syndicate, the Ponzi scheme, everything he had leveraged was built on the assumption that he could sell that house. Without the house, he had nothing. He was not just broke. He was a dead man walking. "That is a lie," Jason screamed, lunging forward. "It is a lie. It is my inheritance. I earned it. I put up with him for 40 years. It is mine." Two private security guards stepped forward, blocking him effortlessly. Jason bounced off their chests and stumbled back, panting, wild-eyed. "It is not a lie, Jason," I said, speaking for the first time since the van stopped. My voice was calm, authoritative, the voice of the man who had negotiated treaties in tents while mortars fell outside. I stepped away from the van, walking past Monica, who shrank away from me as if I were radioactive. I stood next to Richard Stone. I looked at my son. "You earned nothing," I said. "You stole. You lied. You tried to erase me. You thought I was a resource to be minded, not a father to be respected." "Dad, please." Jason begged, his aggression dissolving into panic. "I did not know about the trust." "If I had known..." "If you had known, you would have tried to kill me sooner," I said, cutting him off. "You would have pushed me down those basement stairs instead of just locking me under them. No, Dad. Never. I love you. We are family." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat, the fear, the hollow emptiness of his soul. "Family protects," I said. "Family does not starve their father. Family does not try to declare their father incompetent to pay off gambling debts. Family does not drive their father to a pauper's grave in a windowless van." I straightened my cuffs. I signaled to Richard Stone. "Show him the rest," I ordered. Stone reached into his briefcase and pulled out a different file. This one was not a legal document. It was an evidence folder. It bore the seal of the FBI. Jason Apprentice Stone read from the file. "You are under arrest for wire fraud securities, fraud money laundering, and 18 counts of elder abuse." Jason shook his head, backing away toward the chain-link fence. No, you cannot. I am just a businessman. I have a bad quarter. That is all. We know about the Ponzi scheme, Jason." I said, "We know about the phantom properties in Florida. We know about the $2 million you owe to the Russians. And we know you are using my identity to set up new shell companies to wash the money." I held up the burner phone. "I sent the files to the FBI 20 minutes ago. Jason, they have your laptop. They have your ledger. And thanks to the recording from this morning, they have your confession." Jason hit the fence. He looked left and right, but there was nowhere to go. The woods were dense, and the road was blocked by men who looked like they ate gravel for breakfast. Dad called them off. Jason shrieked, tears streaming down his face. "I am your son. You cannot let them take me. They will kill me in prison. The Russians will get to me." I walked up to him until I was just outside of reaching distance. I looked him in the eye. "You said my good life was over, Jason. You were right. The life where I pretended you were a good man is over. The life where I covered for your mistakes is over." I turned to Monica. She was sobbing quietly, holding her designer purse like a shield. "And you," I said, my voice cold, "you wanted me out of the house. You threw my medals on the floor. You fed me garbage while you ate steak." "I did what he told me," Monica wailed, pointing at her husband. "He made me do it. You are just as guilty." I said, "You held the camera. You signed the checks." I turned back to Richard Stone. "Execute the order," I said. Stone nodded to the sheriff. Sheriff Miller stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal glinted in the sun. "Jason Apprentice, put your hands behind your back." Jason screamed. It was a primal sound of pure despair. He tried to run, dodging to the left, but Mr. Black was there. The security specialist moved with a blur of speed, sweeping Jason's legs out from under him. Jason hit the gravel hard face first. Before he could scramble up, the sheriff was on his knee, and his back cuffs clicking tight around his wrists. Dad Jason howled, his face pressed into the dirt. "Help me, please? I'm sorry. I am so sorry." I stood over him, looking down at the son. I had raised the son Catherine had loved. I felt a phantom pain in my heart, a grief for what could have been. But then I remembered the basement. I remembered the hunger, I remembered the look in his eyes when he told me I wouldn't last the winter. Jason, I said, my voice soft but carrying the weight of a final judgment. You are fired. Fired, he choked out, spitting gravel. What do you mean, you are fired from this family? I said, you are no longer apprentice. I am disinheriting you effective immediately. The trust is locked. The house will be sold, and the proceeds will go to veteran charities. You will not see a single dime. Not for a lawyer, not for bail, not for the commissary. I turned away. Get him out of my sight. The deputies hauled Jason to his feet, dragging him toward the cruiser. He was sobbing, screaming my name, begging for mercy he had never shown me. Monica was being handcuffed by another officer reading her rights, while she screamed that she wanted a divorce. I watched them go. I watched the flashing lights reflect off the tinted windows of the SUVs. Richard Stone stepped up beside me. It is done, Harrison. The assets are secured. The house is yours again. I looked at the van, the vehicle that was supposed to be my hearse. Sell the house, Richard, I said. I do not want to go back there. Too many ghosts. Where will you go? I looked up at the sky. The clouds were breaking. The sun was coming through. I have a lot of frequent flyer miles I haven't used, I said. And there are a lot of places Catherine wanted to see. I think it is time I went to see them for her. I walked toward the lead SUV, leaving the gravel pit, the prison, and my son behind. My good life wasn't over. It was just beginning. The interrogation room was colder than the basement had been. It smelled of industrial cleaner and stale sweat. The scent of desperate men realizing they had run out of options. I sat on the metal chair, my hands folded on the table, watching my son through the scratched plexiglass partition. He was handcuffed to the table, still wearing his dirty suit from the morning. But the arrogance was gone, stripped away layer by layer, until only a terrified child remained. Dad Jason wept, his face streaked with tears and grime. You have to help me? The lawyer said the bail is set at $2 million. They are freezing everything. I said nothing. I just watched him. I studied the face I had washed 1,000 times as a baby. The face I had watched graduate from college. The face that had sneered at me while handing me $50 for food. Dad, please. He begged, leaning as far forward as the chains would allow. I heard what Stone said. $45 million. You have $45 million in a trust. That is enough to fix everything. You can pay off Petrovic. You can hire a dream team defense. You can make the fraud charges go away. He looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes. Even now, even in chains, he still saw me as a wallet. He still thought money could wash away sin. Con, I am your son, he whispered, his voice trembling. I am your flesh and blood. Mom would want you to save me. That was the wrong thing to say. Invoking Catherine's name in this room was a desecration. I leaned forward. The metal chair scraped against the floor, a harsh sound in the small room. Your mother would be ashamed. Jason, I said, my voice low and even, and she would be heartbroken, not because you are in jail, but because of why you are here. You tried to kill her husband. You tried to erase her memory. You sold her home to save your own skin. I didn't mean to stop, I commanded. Stop lying. For once in your life, just stop. I stood up. I walked to the mirror on the wall, knowing my reflection was not what he was seeing, but knowing he saw his own reflection in my eyes. You want my help, Jason? You want my money? Yes. Dad, please. Just this once I will pay you back. I swear. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a business card. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. I slid it across the table toward him. He looked at it confused. It was the card of a law firm. Not Richard Stone's firm, but another one. A firm known for being the most aggressive prosecutors in the state. What is this? Jason asked. That is the firm I just hired, I said. To defend me, no Jason. To assist the district attorney. Jason's mouth fell open. He stared at me, unable to comprehend the words. Using my money, Jason, I continued, my voice cold as the grave. I am using it to ensure that the prosecution has every resource they need. I am funding forensic accountants to find every single penny you stole. I am funding private investigators to find every victim you defrauded. I am going to make sure the case against you is so watertight that you won't see the outside of a prison cell until you are old enough to need a walker. Dad, no. You can't. I can, I said, and I will. You said you wanted me to spend my money. Well, I am spending it. I am buying justice. I turned to the door. You wanted to learn about consequences, son. School is in session. Dad. Jason screamed, lunging against the chains. Dad, come back. I am your son. You cannot do this. I walked out of the room. The heavy steel door slammed shut, cutting off his screams. I stood in the hallway for a moment, adjusting my cuffs. I felt lighter. The weight of 40 years of worry, of making excuses, of trying to fix him was gone. In the lobby, I saw Monica. She wasn't in a cell yet, but she was sitting on a bench surrounded by her luggage. The police had allowed her to pack 2 suitcases before evicting her from the house, which was now a sealed crime scene and a frozen asset. Her designer bags looked out of place on the dirty floor. She looked up when she saw me, her mascara running her face, a mask of shock. They took the car, she whispered. They took my car. They said it was bought with proceeds of crime. It was, I said, walking past her. Where am I supposed to go? She called out, her voice shrill. I have no money. Jason's accounts are frozen. I have nowhere to go. I stopped. I didn't turn around. There is a shelter downtown, I said. It is clean. They serve hot meals. It is better than the basement. I walked out of the police station into the fresh air. Richard Stone was waiting by the SUV. He held open the door. Is it done? He asked. It is done, I said. The next few days were a blur of efficiency. With Jason and Monica gone and the legal machinery grinding them into dust, I was free to move. I returned to the house on Oak Street, one last time, not to live, but to purge. I hired a team of movers. I told them to take everything. The furniture Jason had bought, the terrible modern art, the glass tables, everything. I donated it all to a veterans charity. The house was stripped to the bare walls. I walked through the empty rooms. The sunlight streamed in through the windows, illuminating the dust dancing in the air. It was silent. The ghosts of the last week were gone. I went to the basement door. It was open now. I looked down into the dark one last time. I didn't feel fear. I felt victory. I closed the door and locked it. I listed the house for sale the next morning. The proceeds, as promised, would go to the Apprentice Foundation to help veterans like me who had been forgotten or abused. And then I went to the airport. I didn't take a shuttle. I took a limousine. I didn't stand in line at security. I used the private terminal. I boarded the plane, a Gulfstream G650 I had chartered. It was an extravagance, yes, but after sleeping on concrete for a week, I felt I had earned it. I sat in the wide leather seat. The cabin smelled of fresh leather and orchids. A flight attendant, a young woman with a kind smile, appeared with a bottle of vintage champagne. "Can I get you anything else, Mr. Apprentice?" she asked, pouring the golden liquid into a crystal flute. I looked out the window. The tarmac was wet with rain, just like the day of the funeral. But this rain was different. It was cleansing. "No, thank you," I said, taking the glass. "I have everything I need." The engines roared to life, a deep, powerful thrum that vibrated through the floor. We began to taxi. I pulled a small photo from my wallet. It was Catherine. She was smiling, young and vibrant, standing on a beach in Italy we had visited 40 years ago. "We never went back," I whispered to the photo. "We always said we would, but we never did. Life got in the way. Jason got in the way. The plane accelerated, pushing me back into the seat. We lifted off, leaving the gray city beneath us, breaking through the clouds into the brilliant, blinding sunlight of the upper atmosphere. I looked down at the world below. Somewhere down there, my son was sitting in a cell, learning that actions had consequences. Somewhere down there, the house was empty, waiting for a new family. But up here, the sky was endless. I took a sip of the champagne. It was cold and crisp. Jason had told me my good life was over. He had looked at an old man and seen an ending. But he was wrong. He had just cleared the debris. He had removed the anchors. I raised my glass to the horizon, to Catherine, to the future. My good life wasn't over. It was just beginning. Harrison Apprentice's story serves as a brutal wake-up call for every parent. Blind sacrifice isn't love. It is the fuel for entitlement. Never let the title of family become a weapon used to strip you of your dignity and assets. Establishing clear financial boundaries isn't cruelty. It is the wisdom of experience. Always keep the keys to your maw to your own life. Because when you hand over total control to others, even your own flesh and blood, you are gambling your future on their pity, the most fragile currency in the world. Do not wait until you are cornered in a basement to fight back. If you felt satisfied watching Harrison's master-ass in revenge, or if you recognized your own struggle in his story, hit like and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next shocking story. What would you do if your children demanded control of your assets? Leave a comment below. I read every single one.